The liturgy this morning, the first lesson is Mark, chapter 3, verses 13 through 16 and 20 through 25. Jesus went up to the mountainside Jesus went up to the mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. So he appointed 12. Then he went home, and the crowd came together again, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. And when his family heard this, they went to restrain him, for people were saying, "He has gone out of his mind." And the scribes who came down from Jerusalem said, "He is possessed by Beelzebul, by the prince of demons. He is driving out demons." So Jesus called them over to him and began to speak to them in parables. "How can Satan drive out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. Satan has risen up against himself and is divided. He cannot stand, but his end has come." The second lesson from Mark chapter 9, verses 2 through 8. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John and led them up on a high mountain, apart by themselves. He was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly they looked around. They saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. Here ends the lesson.
So we're weaving together a few themes. Every time I read, I think, oh, we're going this way. There's just so much to weave together, but it's supposed to all be together, apparently. I was, as Ted read that, I was also remembering the passage from Matthew on the same story. And Matthew goes on to say, his disciples, asked to build a place, a house for each one of them, Matthew says, no, you don't hold on to glory that way. You don't need to build a house for each one. This is your moment. So we always have that in our Bible stories. Differences that we need to contemplate, if they matter. Why is one that way and one a little different? Why do they emphasize one piece or another piece? Okay, I'm getting there, folks. But I'm looking like I've lost my first page. Ted, do you have my first page? Won't that be fun to start on my second page? Oh, no, this is my first page. I had just included the scripture passage on it, and it confused me. Hello. In his 1909 speech commemorating Lincoln's 100th birthday, President Woodrow Wilson uttered these words of admiration for Lincoln, and I've used this before, but I love it. "We say that Lincoln was honest. Men used to call him Honest Abe. But honesty is not a quality. Honesty is a manifestation of character. It's the way your character lives out who you are. Lincoln was honest because there was nothing small or petty about him. Such honesty is a quality of largeness. It is that openness of nature which will not consent to subterfuge, which is too big to conceal itself. Little men, and remember, I'm not going to change it all to little men and women. This is a time in history. Little men run to cover and deceive you, but big men cannot and will not run to cover and do not deceive you. Lincoln's honesty was not produced by any calculation, but was the genial expression of the great nature that was behind it. Tomorrow's President's Day. With excessive tumult and division in our country, I'm inspired to remember one who served the office in the presidency at another time of great tumult and division. Abraham Lincoln is undoubtedly one of the most revered presidents in American history. I believe that's something even both parties can agree upon, right? Countless presidents and other elected officials, writers, journalists, and filmmakers have focused great attention and devotion, historical research, and artistic imagination on the life of this widely respected 16th President of the United States. Some of this respect, of course, has to do with the critical time in our history in which Lincoln served in office and the courage he displayed in making difficult, heart-rending decisions in a nation greatly divided. His early death by assassination also added to the drama and pathos to this story of his service to his country. But in a time like this, where the disillusionment, pain, and sense of indignation about what has taken place in the great halls of our democracy is evoked and given voice, the honesty and integrity of an upright human being and a strong leader like Abe Lincoln shines forth from the pages of history. We cling to the words passed down through the years, words we know can be trusted. His presidency has been a beacon of truth and light for almost more than 140 years. His honesty with others began with a deep honesty within himself. This honesty was displayed in a documented event in his early career as a lawyer. I love this story. All clients knew that with old Abe as their lawyer, they would win their case, if it was fair. If not, that it was a waste of time to take their case to him. After listening for some time one day to a would-be client's statement, with his eyes on the ceiling, he swung around in his chair and exclaimed, "Well, you have a pretty good case in technical law, but a pretty bad one in equity and justice. You'll have to get some other fellow to win this case for you. I couldn't do it." All the time while standing talking to the jury, I'd be thinking, "Lincoln, you're a liar." And I believe I should forget myself and say it out loud. As declared in President Wilson's speech, Lincoln's honesty wasn't just belief in ethical practice, it was the human manifestation of a deeply lived integrity, of Lincoln's virtuous being. Did he make mistakes? Yeah. When you're called in a time and a place, there's mistakes that get made. Lincoln had the capacity to see into both friends and foes with deep understanding, compassion, humor, detachment from ego. He was capable of disagreeing with people vehemently and nevertheless working closely with them, often taking them more seriously than they take themselves. Ever known somebody? I think my husband left, so I'm going to tell you, he does that for me. Oh, shoot, I hope he doesn't hear what I'm saying. I don't want him to get the big head. But sometimes I feel like I say things, and he takes them more seriously than I even know what I'm saying. And it's, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's interesting. It's interesting. He challenged them to rise above their own self-interest to meet the needs of their fellow human beings. Though he certainly had plenty of enemies in his time, the virtue and strength of his character stood the test of time and generation after generation continue to be inspired by him. Lincoln suffered not only the hardship of his early poverty and the deep personal losses in his family life, and I don't go into those, but incredible, including a wife who had terrible mental problems as well and losses of sons, but also the agonizing decisions that he had to make for this fledgling nation. Divided over slavery, a division that ultimately took it into a bloody civil war. There was within Lincoln a melancholy that can be described as a fault in his character by some. But history has shown that this melancholy actually became a gift to his powerful leadership. He wasn't on the golf course. This melancholy brought him a capacity for compassion and humility and strength and empathy and wisdom. In his book, Lincoln's Melancholy, Joshua Wolfshank describes how Lincoln saw this world as deeply flawed, and that at his worst, the burdens of this vision pressed him into ruts and troughs. But at best, it fueled a passion for redemption. Lincoln saw our nation's story within a larger story, a timeless story. We talked about that a little bit in Sunday school today, the time, or Martin Luther King called it the long arm of justice or something like that, didn't he? Anybody remember that exact quote? But you can't expect it tomorrow. You know, it's timeless. There's a timelessness to it. God's story of God's purposes in this world. He said it like this: "Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right." Ralph Waldo Emerson once spoke of Lincoln as embodying the true history of the American people in his time. Step by step he walked before them, slow with their slowness, quickening his march by theirs, the true representative of this continent, an entirely public man. Lincoln may have been a public man, but he was also a quietly restrained man and a powerful image of individualism. A man who saw with his own eyes and felt with his own heart and made difficult and well-considered decisions. His individualism was not the false individualism of selfishness and self-involvement, of an immature impulse not to be constrained or to insist on getting what he wanted at all costs to others. It was a kind of individualism that built this country, not a narcissistic, infantile individualism, but an individualism that worked in tandem with social action for the common good. It was an individualism with necessary backbone, intelligence, and heart to foster deep patriotism, respect for tradition, and an abiding faith. Our republic, though not without its faults, was carefully designed to be a nation protected by checks and balances. Remember that? I was a political science major in college, so I remember all those checks and balances. With freedom of and from religion, with an acceptance of human wishes, human varieties of thought and custom and faith and political perspective. It was a human institution as such, susceptible to human abuses of power and privilege and racism and sexism and all the other isms human beings run. But the designers of the Constitution created a structure of government to fight these injustices, an executive, legislative, and legal branch. In our first passage from the gospel today, Jesus is accused by those who despised him of casting out demons in the name of Satan. And what does he use? That passage. How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, it will not be able to stand. And if Satan has risen up against himself and is divided, he cannot stand, and his end will come. Abraham Lincoln referred to this biblical passage in his public speech in a time of profound schism, a time threatening to destroy the Union, a time pulling states and communities and families apart. He trusted the words of Scripture and knew the challenges and heartaches and danger of what faced him as the leader of this now fragile nation. His was a fight for the spirit of America being destroyed by the evil practice of slavery. The spirit of America being destroyed by evil. Whether you practice slavery or you're just darn racist, that's putting us on the line there. He knew he must save the Union, not allow the Union to be divided and conquered. So this is Transfiguration Sunday, taken up the mountain by Jesus, his disciples. Peter, James, and John were blessed to witness the living glory of the Transfiguration. And in that moment, the light within each of these men leapt up and quickened from within to meet the divine light. They knew they had touched and been touched by the light of the holy. But you can't live there, right? Boy, hold on to it, huh? I was telling him in Sunday school that Steve and I went to see E-Town last night to hear David Wilcox. And he had lost, out in the middle of the beautiful poetic music about both personal struggle and the struggle as a nation. There was one song about Lady Liberty being in a state of, what was it called? Shoot, I can't think of the word, but arrest. That's good enough. That's good enough of arrest. In the middle of that, he says, and my beloved Nancy, his wife, she died 2 months ago. And here he's been singing these beautiful songs and up in front of all these people. And it was just this suffering and this will to live and to express that was in this man. Transfiguration is not just a story about godly ones, but is a potential reality for all of us. That's what's so important, you know. When we read these stories about holy things, we have to know that we're being invited into these holy things. We're just not lauding them and using them to beat other people over the heads with. We are being asked to touch the holy. Our world is being continually transfigured around us through beauty and nature and love and birth, but it's also plagued by the dark forces of greed and racism and rage and violence and death. The same God who transfigures the world, through it can transfigure us. The light and wonder of God is always present, but it remains oblivious to most of us. It has the power to broaden our perspectives, to inspire our minds, to awaken our hearts, to support our will for good. It has the power to transfigure our lives. When we disregard the power of the sacred, when we deny the sacred mystery at the center of ourselves, we're blinded from recognizing it in each other. Over and over again, the Gospels, Jesus refers to, in them, he refers to himself as the light of the world. I'm the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but in the light of life. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all the house. In this way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. This was the light that shone in the craggy face of our 16th president and from his soulful eyes. That light came from within. It was the light of an individual presence, a presence not caught in the net of culturally prescribed language, not captured by the dragon of egotism, not intoxicated by power. Lincoln's light was not the light of a merely good leader. It was the light of a truly great soul. So I want to close with a poem, which I also have used. Probably you gave it to me, Louise. by an English singer-songwriter and Anglican priest called Malcolm Guite. I shared this poem in the past. He writes from a perspective of a disciple looking back on that shining moment of the Transfiguration from the bleakness of Good Friday. Okay, so let's do that. We have Transfiguration Sunday. This is how we remember it, right? And then we go to Ash Wednesday. We move through Lent, this time of confession and prayer. And at the end, we go to the cross. Before, all of this before Easter comes. So it's remembering that shining moment when you're in the moment of Good Friday. Sonnets for the Christian Year. Transfiguration by Malcolm Guite. For that one moment in and out of time, on that one mountain where all moments meet, the daily veil that covers the sublime in darkling glass fell dazzled at his feet. There were no angels full of eyes and wings, just living glory full of truth and grace. The love that dances at the heart of things, that line is enough right there. The love that dances at the heart of things shone out upon us from a human face. And to that light, the light in us leapt up. We felt it quicken somewhere deep within, a sudden blaze of long extinguished hope, trembled and tingled through the tender skin. Nor can this blackened sky, this darkened scar, eclipse that glimpse of how things really are. You might need to read it yourself, but it's, nor can this blackened sky, Good Friday or 2025, this darkened scar eclipse the glimpse of how things really are. On this Transfiguration Sunday, even in the darkness of our times, the Christ Spirit still shines in the human face. Walk up the mountain with great souls, and you are blessed to meet them and recognize them. Look for this light in the living. Their truth and grace will guide your path.